some arbitrage system where we have magic made-up currency. I think that
No.
that way ends badly.
No. It will be clearly that if you pay in euros, then we credit you back onto your account some euros onto the.
Let's say you buy something for 50 euro, you get a credit for 10 euro. The 10 euro lands on your account, and you can spend it any way you want.
With any order on any game, there will be no limitations whatsoever.
No expiration date or anything like that.
Okay, from Crossevecchie, which is nearly the ancient houses of Firenze. Will you continue to add old classic games to your catalog, or will GOG definitely shift towards selling newer contemporary titles? Because there are obviously a whole lot of games in the wish list, classics that we don't have. Are they impossible to get? Have we given up? Are we looking at adding different platforms? Talk about what's happening with old games on GOG.
Yeah, I mean, okay, when we started, it was fairly easy because we still had all the old games to release. I believe we're quite good with releasing a lot of them, and right now the list is shorter, and obviously on top of the list are the toughest cases. So we are working hard on every single of them. Some of them are so tough and so entangled in terms of the rights. I mean, the toughest nuts to crack are like, somebody owns the music, somebody owns the rights to the code, and somebody owns the IP. And the problem is that none of these companies exist, and it's a mess. Or there's 10 people in the heritage, and you cannot get through to them. So there are really, honestly, cases like that. So probably will not see these games anytime soon. Although I think System Shock 2, it's a good example of magical things happening. It looked like an unsolvable puzzle, and it materialized one day. We managed to get the right. So even impossible can be possible, but it really will take a lot of patience. We are definitely on to old games, and actually a big part of our time internally, of our biz team and our product team, is devoted solely to classic games. And there are sort of two angles. First of all is trying to sign and prepare the older stuff, which is on the wish list, which we can get and which we think is valuable. And the second part is looking after the titles which we have already released, like for example the recent what was it, last week, the D&D packs, the language packs. So if you look at it this way, we're really putting a lot of efforts to games we've already released, we've already sold, and theoretically, why should we bother? We bother because we care, and we want to have perfect versions of the games in our own collections. It's really, really important. And then if we can add some language packs or come across some additional content which we can bundle with these games, that's obviously what we are doing. So this is the older games on GOG and the newer games. I think we definitely are after them. We would like to have all good contemporary titles, because one day there will be the older games, and we'll be selling them this way. And if we'll not get them today, it is much harder to get them afterwards. How strange it wouldn't sound. So we are definitely focused on both, and pushing a lot towards signing the remaining older games. Probably there will be always something hanging on the wish list, but we'll be resolving.
There will always be something.
Yeah, there will always be something.
I'm seeing some people
like the Mech Warrior.
Like Mech Warrior, we'll never get that. It makes me very sad. When I was hired, I'm like, Mech Warrior, dude. They're like, no, they can't have it. Oh well. I've seen some people on the Twitch stream saying, "Hey, are you guys even paying attention to us?" Yes, we are. People are asking about T-shirts and posters still more. I've seen a chant for T-shirts. We don't currently have a T-shirt store open. We used to have one, but it wasn't very good. So we stopped, and we're investigating having one open. If there's a good job of shipping both to Europe and the US. The problem is increasingly as we get a more global audience, we didn't have a good organization to work with for how to ship to everywhere around the world. I've also seen some questions about what's up with Humongous Entertainment, which recently Humongous Entertainment has a big catalog of classics. They came up on Steam, and they aren't on GOG. Obviously, you'd see them if they were. Could they come to GOG? may they come to GOG? I think maybe I'm the only one who knows what's going on with those. They could come to GOG.
Isn't your question, Trevor?
People do know what's going on, but just not
okay.
sitting here. They may come to GOG, but we have not yet gotten them. We may someday do so. We have talked to them. They were acquired and put on Steam through Night Dive, which are the people who brought us System Shock 2. So we know them definitely, and we're trying to arrange something, I'm sure. But as to where it is,
Top Pot Goes to the Moon. I still remember it was pretty cute. I'm not sure if it's our core audience, but yeah, these are good games.
Sure. So we have from Janus Sushi. Any chances for Torment, Tides of Numenera, and Pillars of Eternity on GOG? Yes and yes. So then next.
Yes and yes, and funny enough, this Thursday we're actually going to Sweden and meeting with Paradox. So as Paradox is publishing Obsidian titles, definitely Pillars of Eternity, but I also think the Torment, we'll be talking about it with them and hopefully signing them soon.
Cool. So we have from Mivas, what makes you decide a game is or is not a good fit in our catalog? For example, we have a game, Winter Wolves, mentioned here. People who like tactical RPGs, visual novels, and Sims. And I'm guessing we don't offer it in GOG, and perhaps we have said we don't want it. So what makes a game not a good fit? It's not necessarily at all related to the quality of the game or even who the game was made by, any of that. It is looking at what we have to offer to the developer by putting it on GOG, and whether we think our audience will respond to it, whether they might like it or not. You want to go into any more detail about that?
I mean, I think the quality criteria and why it's also important, because that's sort of coming back to what I said before about a curated place. Curated place means we cannot have everything, and sometimes we'll miss on something or we'll overlook something. But especially for the indie games, we are getting hundreds of submissions, and we cannot release all of these games. So we are trying to choose the best ones, and then how we filter it, we go through the wish lists, we go through the feedback, we check what kind of interest it is all around for these games whenever we have doubts. And sometimes, whenever we get a really great submission, we say, wow, no questions asked, this game fits perfectly. But if we're getting a submission of Little Mermaid 3 and Disney, I'm not talking about your IP, no. For example, and it's a decent mermaid game, like under the water and stuff, and do you think it's good for our audience? No, it's probably not. So sometimes the criteria are like that, but generally we always look, judge the game, it goes through our QA, we look at it from the quality, from the technical standpoint, then check the interest on the wish list. So if there is anything we are omitting and you think it's important, we should have it in the catalog, put it on the wish list and ask your friends to vote for it.
It is also worth noting, sometimes when we see an early build of a game, we may not actually fully understand what's happening there. And then when a more final version does show up, we've actually had some game we initially were like, we don't think this is something that would be good for us. And then we see a more polished, more final build come later. We're like, you know what? We made a bad call in the beginning. And we're going to take a look at this again and see if maybe we want to add it now. We had games like The Cat Lady, I think, was one that we had initially said, you know what? This early build we're not so sure about. But then a later build we saw and we were like, no, this is actually, it's got some interesting things going on. So we ended up bringing it on GOG. We have a question from DC. How can we as users support the DRM-free revolution other than by not buying crippled DRM copies of software? Here's my shameless plug, as sponsored to you by GDoc, who is the guy managing all of our questions here. You can like us on Facebook. You can share us on Facebook or anywhere else. You can follow us on Twitter. You can become part of our blog. You can follow us on YouTube. We're now obviously on Twitch, and you can tell all your friends. Accost random strangers in the street, but be careful, that might not be legal where you are, and tell them they should join the DRM-free revolution as well. I believe that's pretty much all of your options for how you can spread the word. From White Elk, Do we guys ever revisit games? Yes, we actually just talked about that. Would we consider long-term mod hosting? Many people have problems finding mods. We have done mod spotlights. We found games that were really cool, and we pointed to some mods for them. I don't know that there's any intent to do mod hosting because we're taking someone else's content and getting permission for that could be tricky. To say, hey, here's a user-made thing, we're going to host it now. That seems like kind of a little bit sketchy to me. I know that sometimes things get lost for forever because the one guy who made it and had it on his website took it down because he stopped hosting his website. But it's tough to say, hey, we like your content, let's just take it, please. That's a little, I'm not sure about that. What do you think?
That's basically it. I think it's something, if you're not an industry insider, you always forget that the legal part is a very, very important part. You cannot just forget about. So, and it comes to many different parts. The question about mods is one of them, but for example, the Linux support is not just that you grab the game, you convert it to Linux through a wrapper and you release it on GOG. It requires contacting the developer, signing an amendment to the agreement, proving them that the game works properly, maybe even offering them a build so they can test it themselves. It is a always a lengthy process, even for such a thing supposedly simple as a mod hosting.
Sure.
Sadly, that's the business part.
That is, and because we provide support,
That's the boring part of the business. Yes.
and because we provide support for our games, of course, if we're saying here's a mod and we're providing it from our servers and then it doesn't work on Windows XP, but we didn't test it, now people are going to be unhappy. It gets tricky quickly.
But it doesn't mean we're not thinking about it and not planning something smart. Bear with us, please.
Mm-hmm. Sure. What else do we have here? We have. Okay, is there any chance of Blood Omen Legacy Kane on GOG? It's a little weird having every game at the first tier. We actually were going to release it and then couldn't because again rights issues crop up all the time. So that was a game that we had gotten ready to release and is now currently tied up in legal and licensing limbo, and has remained there for a year more. So I can't really say if it'll ever come out of legal limbo. I also saw a question go by on the Twitch chat. I didn't catch who it was. How do we figure out pricing? That's a shout out, I think, to our biz dev team who actually builds some fairly sophisticated models in Excel with how many copies do we think will sell at what price and
yeah, but I mean, with the pricing, let's look at the older games as one part, because the pricing here is we're really trying to look what the game is worth and then trying to convince the license owner or the content owner, hey, we think I don't know, $5.99 or $9.99 is the sweet spot for this game, and not 20, please, not 20. People don't like this price. For newer games, it's more simple. It's the content owner coming up with a certain ID, and then usually if it's a digital only, we have a chance to convince them to do one price. If it is a retail release as well, this gets more tricky because the retail prices in different countries are different, and usually developers or content creators, they have already agreements for the retail, so the digital sort of mimics the retail. Although right now it's usually a smaller part of the sales, but this will be changing. Digital will be taking over.
All right, from Twitter, at Cool Snake. Any plans for more payment options? Anything we can talk about with that?
I think we can talk about this since we already mentioned that we are going with local currencies as an option. That's the important thing to stress here. That will be an optional thing, meaning you will still be able to pay in USD. Having that said, if you prepare to pay in your local currencies, then we want to give you guys an option to pay also using local payment methods. So be it carte bleue, I think this was called so this way in France some time ago. I know it's still the same proper name. Local payment methods for UK, local payment methods for Germany or for Russia. There are quite a few of them, so there will be definitely more payment options added. We're just not ready to talk about the specifics since we're still in the process of implementing it to GOG. So it will still take some time.
Test it and serve it to you on the plate, and this won't be so far off.
It will definitely happen though.
Yeah.
So, do you port old games by yourself? Do you have support from the publishers? Maybe you can tell about somehow in the beginning it was getting these games.
I mean, for the older games, it's always a tricky thing, and how we started the business and in the old games aspect, how it works until today.